I am 32 years old, currently running a successful independent event planning agency in Seattle. For the past few months, I had been working tirelessly to organize a lavish 90-guest anniversary party for my parents, using my own personal savings. A heavy wave of exhaustion washed over my body as I prepared my gown, yet I kept telling myself that pushing through the fatigue was my absolute duty to the family I had financially supported for several long years. While taking a brief moment to check my social media notifications before heading to the extravagant venue, my heart completely stopped beating. Staring right back at me was a professionally taken family photograph uploaded by my father just moments prior, completely omitting my presence. I felt an unbearable sting of betrayal when I read the cruel caption attached to the glowing picture stating, "Only our dearest ones." Making matters even worse, the comment section beneath the post was filled with mocking remarks from my siblings gleefully excluding me from their perfect dynamic. In that exact split second, I realized every single financial sacrifice I had ever made was being ruthlessly trampled upon without remorse. I immediately called the catering company to cancel the massive payment for the entire 90-guest anniversary celebration. Shortly after pulling the plug on their luxurious event, I stared at 73 missed calls flooding my glowing screen. I ultimately replied to their frantic text messages with just 5 cold words before completely turning off my device. If you have ever experienced the profound pain of being financially manipulated by your own family, let us go back to the beginning to see exactly how this ridiculous financial nightmare unfolded. 2 weeks before that fateful party actually took place, this entire miserable mess began inside the surprisingly cramped living room of my childhood home. My father, Arthur, stood right next to the fireplace wearing his Sunday best, while my mother, Beverly, sat carefully on the edge of the faded sofa to deliver their grand announcement. They excitedly declared their absolute intention to host a massive anniversary celebration at the most exclusive seafood restaurant located right along the Seattle waterfront. They explicitly stated this extravagant gathering was entirely necessary to show off their fictional wealth and social status to their high society friends. Almost immediately after the expensive location was revealed to the room, my older brother Marcus heavily sighed while his wife Fiona dramatically rubbed her temples in perfectly synchronized distress. Marcus leaned forward with a carefully rehearsed expression of deep financial agony spreading across his face before opening his mouth to speak. "Dad, you know we are currently drowning in heavy mortgage payments right now, so we cannot possibly contribute a single dollar to this extravagant event." Fiona quickly nodded in enthusiastic agreement while subtly adjusting her brand new designer handbag sitting right next to her on the sofa cushion. She added a few extra complaints about how expensive raising their children had become lately, completely ignoring the luxurious vacations they took every single summer. Before the room could even fully digest that blatant excuse from the Golden Sun, my younger sister Chelsea nervously glanced at her husband Julian to prepare their own defensive strategy. Chelsea spoke up with a high-pitched tone of victimization to ensure everyone understood her supposedly devastating fabricated struggles. "Julian and I are barely surviving our massive student loan debts, so you absolutely cannot expect us to chip in for a luxury dinner either." Julian kept his eyes glued to the floorboards as if he was deeply ashamed, yet I knew for a fact they had just purchased a brand new sports car the previous month. At that exact moment, the heavy atmosphere in the room shifted entirely as 4 pairs of expectant eyes slowly turned toward my direction, like predators cornering their prey. Mom adjusted her posture and offered me a sickeningly sweet smile that always preceded an enormous financial demand targeted directly at my savings account. "Courtney, you are a highly successful event planner with a very stable income, so organizing this beautiful celebration for your beloved parents should be practically effortless for you." A sudden wave of intense frustration boiled in the pit of my stomach because they always conveniently forgot my intense professional struggles while constantly glorifying the minimal life efforts of Marcus and Chelsea. Dad crossed his arms firmly across his chest while adding more pressure to the suffocating situation without offering any actual logistical or financial assistance. Your mother deserves a truly beautiful night after everything we sacrificed for you kids, so stepping up financially is the absolute least you could do for this family. Mom then reached over to gently pat my hand while whispering manipulative praises about my professional capabilities and my supposed duty as the most reliable daughter in the household. They expertly painted a vivid picture where refusing to fund their luxurious waterfront party would instantly brand me as a selfish monster who hated her own family members. I looked around the silent room at Marcus staring at the ceiling, and Chelsea pretending to check her fingernails while fully realizing that nobody was ever going to defend my boundaries. The sheer weight of their collective expectations pressed down on my shoulders until breathing became a genuinely difficult task in that stuffy living room. Despite feeling an overwhelming sense of resentment building inside my chest, I slowly reached into my designer purse to pull out my personal checkbook. I reluctantly wrote out a massive deposit check totaling tens of thousands of dollars to secure that expensive Seattle venue for their ridiculous vanity project. I handed the signed paper over to Mom with a sickeningly blind hope that this massive financial sacrifice would finally earn me a tiny fraction of their genuine affection. Mom snatched the check with glowing eyes, while Marcus and Chelsea audibly exhaled in pure relief now that their own bank accounts were safely protected from the upcoming financial slaughter. I walked out of that suffocating house feeling completely drained of energy, foolishly believing that buying them a perfect night would somehow fix the deeply broken dynamics within our household. For 3 grueling years prior to this extravagant anniversary event, I had grown accustomed to playing the miserable role of their personal automated teller machine. Revealing this toxic history feels humiliating because it exposes how I willingly allowed myself to be transformed into a convenient financial tool. My primary function within that household was explicitly limited to repeatedly resolving the disastrous consequences born from their constant financial irresponsibility. The unspoken expectation to silently fix their continuous monetary blunders was woven into the very fabric of our daily family dynamics without any hesitation or remorse from anyone involved. The most prominent example of this relentless exploitation occurred when I was forced to drain my hard-earned savings account to clear an enormous credit card debt accumulated by Mom. She had spent several consecutive months recklessly purchasing luxury designer clothes and expensive home decor items that they absolutely could not afford. When the aggressive collection agencies finally started calling their home phone continuously, she arrived at my apartment in a flood of dramatic tears, demanding an immediate financial rescue. I reluctantly transferred the massive sum to prevent them from facing severe legal consequences, while swallowing her empty promises of a strict repayment plan that predictably never materialized. Watching her proudly wear those exact same designer outfits to casual family gatherings while my bank account remained completely depleted was a constantly painful reminder of my actual worth. The ongoing financial abuse was certainly not limited to my parents, as Marcus frequently treated my professional success as his own personal emergency fund whenever his careless lifestyle choices caught up with him. Just last winter, he completely destroyed the transmission in his expensive truck because he continuously ignored the basic maintenance schedule despite having plenty of free time. Standing in the freezing cold parking lot outside the local repair shop, I handed over my credit card to the mechanic while shooting a glaring look directly at my older sibling. "Marcus, this is the absolute last time I am paying your expensive bills for mistakes you could have easily prevented," I firmly stated with a voice trembling from sheer frustration. He simply leaned against the freshly repaired vehicle while offering a frustratingly indifferent shrug that perfectly captured his lifelong sense of extreme entitlement regarding my personal money. "Come on, Courtney, you make plenty of money from your business, so what is the harm in helping your brother out a little bit?" He casually replied before driving away without even uttering a proper expression of gratitude. The most devastating aspect of this parasitic arrangement was the blatant emotional favoritism displayed openly during our mandatory Sunday dinners at their house. I specifically recall the evening I finally secured a major corporate contract that officially elevated my event planning agency into a highly profitable enterprise. I excitedly shared the monumental news over dinner, but my announcement was met with distracted nods before the conversation was swiftly redirected entirely away from my hard-earned achievements. Just a few moments later, Dad excitedly clinked his glass with a silver fork to command the attention of the table, while an enormous smile stretched across his face. "Marcus just got accepted as a management trainee at the logistics company, so our family absolutely needs to throw a huge celebration party this weekend," Dad enthusiastically declared to the loudly cheering table. Sitting at that crowded dining table surrounded by cheering relatives, celebrating a basic entry-level position while completely ignoring my massive business milestone was a deeply shattering emotional experience. An overwhelming sense of suffocating loneliness and profound emptiness washed over my entire being as I quietly pushed my food around my plate in absolute silence. It became painfully obvious that Dad and Mom only truly remembered my phone number when their overdue financial bills urgently required a reliable person to process the heavy payments. They possessed an endless reservoir of genuine pride and unconditional emotional support for my siblings, leaving me with nothing but a miserable pile of cleared invoices to validate my existence. The dark realization that my only measurable value to the people who raised me was directly tied to the available balance in my checking account finally solidified the bitter truth deep within my exhausted mind. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, on the very day of the highly anticipated anniversary celebration, my personal cell phone began ringing incessantly with incoming notifications. The incredibly stressful morning officially commenced with a highly demanding phone call from Mom regarding the finalized catering arrangements for the massive gathering. She aggressively commanded an immediate menu upgrade to include premium Alaskan lobster, alongside the absolute most expensive French wine available for all 90 invited guests attending the celebration. Her entitled tone clearly suggested these massive last-minute changes were a basic necessity, rather than an exorbitant luxury being funded entirely by my rapidly dwindling bank account. My lifelong patience completely evaporated as the sheer audacity of her outrageous financial demands finally pushed me entirely past my breaking point. "Mom, I have already paid way too much for this entire event, so I absolutely cannot shoulder this ridiculous extra cost," I firmly stated while gripping the phone tightly. She immediately scoffed loudly through the receiver before sharply retaliating with a deeply manipulative, emotional accusation designed specifically to induce maximum psychological guilt during our conversation. "You are acting so incredibly selfish right now, calculating every single penny for just one special party for your own parents," she angrily snapped before aggressively terminating the connection. Barely a few minutes after that disastrous conversation abruptly concluded, a rapid succession of highly hurtful text messages from Chelsea suddenly illuminated my glowing screen. She had clearly been briefed about my firm refusal to fund the luxurious menu upgrades by our furious mother before deciding to launch her own vicious digital attack. "You only know how to live for yourself, so you are intentionally ruining the happiest day of our family," her venomous message glaringly proclaimed in bold digital letters. Reading those deeply ungrateful words caused a heavy knot of pure resentment to form deeply inside my stomach during that terrible morning of endless demands. That specific message definitively confirmed that every single monumental financial sacrifice I continuously made for them was entirely meaningless in their heavily biased eyes. Utterly exhausted by the relentless barrage of cruel criticisms from the exact same people I was actively supporting financially, I decisively chose to end the senseless arguments immediately. I forcefully disconnected the mobile device from the cellular network to permanently block any further incoming hostility from my deeply ungrateful relatives. My legs felt incredibly heavy as I slowly stumbled toward the center of the living room before collapsing heavily onto the soft cushions of my sofa. A profound sense of complete mental deterioration washed over my entire exhausted body, while the silent apartment offered a temporary refuge from their relentless emotional abuse. Seeking a mindless digital distraction from the overwhelming emotional fatigue crushing my spirit, I casually opened the Facebook application to blindly scroll through my daily feed. The absolute final straw that permanently severed my lingering familial loyalty materialized instantly at the very top of my glowing digital timeline without any prior warning. Staring right back at my tearful eyes was a radiant photograph featuring the 5 of them happily posing together in the brightly lit living room. This perfectly composed digital image was proudly uploaded by Dad just an hour earlier. During the exact same time frame, they were viciously demanding more money from me. They were completely glowing with manufactured joy in a picture that purposefully excluded my existence, while the accompanying caption viciously prioritized their preferred family members. Making this public humiliation even more unbearable were the mocking comments left by Marcus directly beneath the image for everyone on the internet to witness. He was gleefully celebrating their exclusive inner circle, while blatantly ridiculing my notable absence with a sickening level of publicly displayed familial cruelty. At exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon on that same day, my ultimate threshold for enduring their emotional abuse officially shattered completely. Making a firm decision that I could no longer tolerate playing the miserable role of their submissive victim for another single second, I decisively picked up my smartphone. The overwhelming realization that my massive financial contributions meant absolutely nothing to them finally severed the last remaining threads of my misplaced familial loyalty. I immediately navigated through my extensive contact list to directly call the seafood restaurant manager Victor, who was currently actively overseeing the massive anniversary preparations at the prestigious waterfront venue. The phone barely rang twice before he quickly answered with a highly professional greeting amidst the loud background noise of a busy commercial kitchen preparing for a huge, wealthy crowd. I took a deep breath to steady my voice before delivering the devastating instructions that would completely ruin their highly anticipated high society gathering. Victor, I want to officially cancel the entire food menu and withdraw your catering staff from the venue immediately. I firmly instructed into the receiver without any hesitation. A heavy silence temporarily replaced the chaotic kitchen sounds before the experienced event coordinator responded with an incredibly shocked tone regarding my sudden drastic directive. Courtney, you will absolutely lose the entire massive financial deposit if we pull out right now. Are you completely sure about this? Victor nervously confirmed while seeking absolute clarity. Right as I was verbally confirming my final irrevocable decision to the extremely bewildered restaurant manager, a familiar knock echoed through my silent living room. My best friend Sarah had just arrived at my apartment to drop off some urgent corporate documents for our upcoming independent event planning projects. She carefully walked into the brightly lit room while instantly noticing the intense fury visibly radiating from my rigid posture and tightly clenched jaw. After quietly listening to the absolute finality of my aggressive phone conversation, she gently placed the heavy corporate folders onto the nearest wooden coffee table. You are doing the exact right thing, Courtney, because it is finally time you stop letting them endlessly use you for their own selfish financial gain. She softly reassured me with genuine compassion. Hearing her highly supportive words provided the exact validation I desperately needed to confidently execute the ultimate destruction of their pathetic vanity project. Taking a remarkably deep breath to steady my racing heartbeat, I returned my full attention to the ongoing phone call to solidify the ultimate cancellation protocol. I steadfastly finalized the abrupt termination of all catering services, while consciously accepting the massive financial penalty associated with immediately breaking our binding commercial contract. Sacrificing that enormous amount of personal money felt like a surprisingly small price to pay for permanently stripping away their manufactured high society arrogance and unearned pride. I purposefully dismantled the luxurious facade they had painstakingly constructed to impress their wealthy social circle using the funds from my heavily drained bank account. Once the definitive verbal confirmation was officially established with the confused venue management, I immediately disabled every single notification alert on my mobile device to ensure absolute tranquility. Instead of forcing my exhausted body into the elegant evening gown hanging perfectly pressed inside my closet, I slowly walked toward the kitchen counter to open a fresh bottle. I carefully poured myself a generously large glass of premium red wine before returning to the comfortable sofa to sit in complete peaceful silence. A profound wave of immense psychological relief smoothly washed over my entire being, while I thoroughly enjoyed the quiet sanctuary of my secluded apartment, knowing their fake perfection was about to violently crumble. At exactly 7:30 in the evening, the ultimate public disaster officially commenced within the prestigious waterfront district of downtown Seattle. An incredibly tense atmosphere rapidly descended upon the luxurious VIP hall, where 90 high society guests had comfortably seated themselves at their exquisitely decorated tables. Despite the elegant floral arrangements decorating the massive room, absolutely no gourmet appetizers were being served by the waitstaff, while the soothing background music completely stopped playing. A profound sense of absolute panic completely consumed Mom and Dad as they desperately scanned the empty kitchen swinging doors looking for any signs of incoming culinary service. Their manufactured wealthy facade violently crumbled into dust when the venue manager coldly approached their head table with a highly formal expression plastered across his professional face. He loudly informed my horrified parents that the incredibly expensive catering contract had been officially canceled by the authorized financial payer right before the grand opening speech. The shocking revelation instantly echoed throughout the suddenly quiet dining room, causing the elegantly dressed attendees to immediately begin whispering maliciously about the incredibly shameful public incident. Several prominent business partners attending the gathering became visibly agitated by the blatant lack of basic hospitality during what was supposed to be a premium dining experience. They openly criticized the sheer unprofessionalism of hosting a massive luxury dinner party without actual food before angrily standing up from their reserved seats to exit the restaurant. Watching their wealthy acquaintances storm out of the building due to extreme hunger absolutely destroyed the fragile social reputation my family had spent years painstakingly building up. The humiliating reality of their self-inflicted situation caused Chelsea and Marcus to frantically argue with the remaining attendees, attempting to salvage their completely ruined anniversary celebration. While my relatives suffered through the most humiliating public catastrophe of their entire lives, I was comfortably sitting on my living room sofa sipping premium red wine. A genuine smile stretched across my relaxed face as I casually unlocked my mobile device to discover exactly 73 missed calls, desperately demanding my immediate attention. My glowing screen was completely flooded with notifications, including a highly frantic voicemail from Mom echoing through my quiet apartment with a tone of sheer, absolute terror. "Courtney, where is the food right now because all of our important guests are leaving? So you need to fix this massive problem immediately," she hysterically screamed. Listening to her desperate, pleading voice begging the exact same daughter she had publicly excluded from her family portrait brought an immense wave of pure psychological satisfaction. Rather than engaging in a useless screaming match over the cellular network, I navigated directly to our shared digital group chat to deliver my final devastating blow. I methodically typed out a singular cold response guaranteed to inflict the absolute maximum amount of emotional damage upon their deeply shattered egos during their darkest hour. I'm not your dearest one. My 5 calculated words permanently sealed their miserable fate before I confidently pressed the sending button on my glowing smartphone keyboard. Following that ultimate declaration of profound personal independence, I systematically blocked every single phone number associated with my toxic relatives, without feeling a single ounce of regret. Placing the silenced mobile device firmly face down on the wooden coffee table, I leaned back into my soft cushions to thoroughly enjoy my beautifully peaceful weekend evening. The crushing weight of their endless financial expectations finally lifted off my weary shoulders, leaving behind a magnificent sense of permanent freedom I had desperately craved forever. Knowing they were finally facing the severe consequences of their own manipulative actions allowed me to comfortably close my heavy eyelids in absolute, unbothered serenity that night. The following morning, an incredibly violent pounding on my front door violently shook the entire quiet hallway of my residential apartment building. The highly aggressive knocking absolutely refused to cease until I cautiously unlatched the heavy steel deadbolt to discover my entire furious family storming inside my home without requesting any permission whatsoever. An explosive wave of pure, unadulterated rage immediately erupted from Dad as his completely reddened face contorted with unprecedented levels of absolute fury. He aggressively pointed his trembling index finger directly at my chest while screaming loud enough for all my neighboring apartments to clearly hear his unrestrained wrath. "What the hell did you do last night because you completely turned this entire family into a massive laughingstock for the whole city?" He furiously roared, while forcefully stepping much further into my personal living space. Feeding off our father's explosive, aggressive energy, Marcus suddenly lunged forward with a highly threatening physical posture, specifically designed to forcefully intimidate me into quiet submission. I immediately stepped backward to maintain a perfectly safe physical distance from his unpredictable hostility, while steadily maintaining an intensely cold eye contact with my older sibling. "Take one more step toward me right now, and I will strictly call the police to drag you out of here immediately," I ruthlessly warned, with a dangerously calm voice that instantly froze him directly in his tracks. Deliberately ignoring their chaotic screaming and their increasingly desperate verbal attempts to completely manipulate the factual narrative, I calmly reached deep into my pocket to securely retrieve my mobile device. Swiping purposefully across the glass, I found the exact screenshot of that devastating Facebook photograph before holding the brightly glowing screen directly in front of their deeply furious faces. This absolutely undeniable digital evidence instantly intercepted their incoming barrage of highly deceptive lies regarding their supposedly innocent emotional intentions during the previous afternoon. My index finger forcefully tapped directly against the cruel digital caption, explicitly excluding my existence that Dad had so gleefully typed out for the entire public internet to clearly witness. Confronted so forcefully with the absolute naked truth of their own deeply malicious public actions, their previously arrogant attitudes evaporated rapidly into an incredibly awkward bodily stiffness. The incredibly loud barrage of aggressive verbal blaming and highly hostile accusations instantly morphed into a deeply humiliating silence that thoroughly suffocated the highly tense living room. Their wide, anxious eyes frantically darted back and forth between the glowing photographic evidence and my remarkably stone-cold facial expression as the terrifying, catastrophic reality of their profound mistake finally settled. A horrifying dawn of dark realization visibly washed over Mom and Dad as they silently understood they had personally destroyed their only reliable source of limitless financial funding forever. Taking full psychological advantage of their completely stunned silence, I decisively seized the absolute control over my own destiny by delivering my final, unforgiving verbal verdict. Firmly declaring my permanent intention, I vowed to completely sever every single toxic blood tie permanently connecting me to their highly parasitic existence without feeling any remaining hesitation. My unwavering voice ruthlessly demanded that every single manipulative user immediately vacate my private sanctuary before purposefully taking a deliberate step toward the widely open entryway. Watching them slowly shuffle out of my apartment with deeply defeated physical postures felt incredibly empowering after patiently enduring so many miserable years of their endless financial oppression. The exact moment their dark shadows crossed the final wooden threshold, I aggressively slammed the heavy door completely shut to permanently end my lifelong era of debilitating familial manipulation. 1 month after that ridiculous, disastrous night finally concluded, the truly cruel reality officially began to heavily surround their miserable daily lives with absolutely no escape route. The incredibly catastrophic financial consequences violently crashed down upon Arthur and Beverly because they were desperately forced to furiously swipe their personal credit cards to their absolute maximum limits. They blindly accumulated an enormous mountain of inescapable high-interest debt just to cover the massive venue cancellation penalties, alongside ordering emergency fast food for their remaining guests. Arthur and Beverly could no longer proudly show their faces at the prestigious waterfront country club because the humiliating gossip regarding their catastrophic anniversary dinner spread rapidly among the wealthy elites. Their meticulously crafted illusion of overwhelming generational wealth shattered completely, leaving them deeply isolated from the superficial social circles they had desperately sacrificed my mental health to deeply impress. A vicious internal division rapidly materialized within the previously united family dynamic as Marcus and Chelsea aggressively turned against one another with intense hostility over every single minor disagreement. Those two constantly entitled siblings were suddenly forced to directly split the heavy financial burden of supporting their bankrupt parents without utilizing my heavily drained bank account to magically solve their mounting problems. Vicious screaming matches over unpaid utility bills and overdue mortgage installments completely replaced their previously joyful family gatherings now that their primary financial victim had permanently escaped. Meanwhile, Marcus desperately attempted to continuously call my blocked number from various untraceable burner phones, pathetically begging for emergency cash injections to save his own rapidly sinking lifestyle. Chelsea even dared to send a ridiculously dramatic email claiming I owed them a massive apology for ruining their familial bond, which I immediately deleted without feeling any guilt. Regarding my own personal journey forward, I have strictly maintained an absolute state of permanent zero contact with every single toxic relative involved in that endless manipulation. I am currently dedicating my entire reserve of professional energy toward aggressively expanding my independent event planning company across the wealthy corporate sectors of Seattle. Refusing to ever again entertain their deeply manipulative psychological tactics has miraculously cured the chronic anxiety that heavily plagued my entire existence during those miserable years of absolute financial subjugation. Waking up every single morning inside my perfectly peaceful apartment allows me to thoroughly enjoy every single hard-earned dollar generated by my own exhausting physical labor. The profound psychological freedom of finally recognizing my own inherent self-worth has completely transformed my daily reality into a beautifully vibrant experience. I no longer flinch whenever my mobile device vibrates, knowing with absolute certainty that the incoming notification is a lucrative business opportunity rather than another pathetic demand for immediate funding. Reclaiming my absolute financial independence while watching their fake high society facade violently crumble into miserable bankruptcy remains the greatest personal victory of my entire adult life. Before wrapping up this incredibly dramatic story today, please do not click away just yet, because there are some vital lessons we absolutely must discuss. Watching Courtney fiercely reclaim her financial independence provides a magnificent masterclass in establishing unbreakable personal boundaries against deeply toxic relatives. I firmly believe biological DNA never automatically grants anyone the inherent right to continuously exploit your hard-earned success or permanently treat your bank account like their personal ATM. If you were placed in her exact shoes, would you have possessed the ultimate courage to cancel that massive luxury dinner right before the guests arrived? Please share your honest personal thoughts or alternative approaches regarding her revenge strategy down in